Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to get good in Dota 2? Most of us have played thousands of games, watched streams, copied pro builds, and grinded ranked for hours. But somehow, climbing still feels impossible. As a Dota 2 coach, I've helped hundreds of players climb thousands of MMR by teaching them important macro concepts. Recently, one of my career students managed to climb from 2.4k to 3.6k MMR in just 2.5 months. That's a 1.2k MMR climb. It might not seem like much, but this is a work of unlearning many years of bad habits and learning to adopt new ones. So I decided to make this video to explain to you guys how he did it and to give you a realistic approach towards improving in Dota 2. I hope you enjoyed the video. When John first came to me, he was making the same mistakes that kept most players stuck for years. Chances are, you have made some of these mistakes too. He could last hit, creep aggro, press buttons and react fast. But his gameplay had no structure. His games felt random and his lanes were inconsistent. Sometimes he would go on huge win streaks and play like a pro player. And sometimes he would go on big lose streaks and look like he had forgotten how to play the game entirely. This 50-50 win rate kept him stuck for years, and he didn't know how to break out of it. If this sounds familiar, here's the truth. You're not losing because of teammates, smurfs, or bad luck. You're losing because there's hundreds of little things you're failing to notice. These little things are snowballing into bigger mistakes every game. Sure, we all have days with griefers, smurfs, or teammates who run down mid, but this make up maybe 20-30% of your games? The other 70%? Well, that's honest. And that's good news, because now it means we can fix it. Let me explain. If you really want to climb, the first thing you need to fix is your laning discipline. Before coaching with me, John always felt like he needed to, quote-unquote, do something in lane. He clicked and moved around too much unnecessarily, which was a bad habit that came from playing League of Legends. This would often put him in bad positions to trade or take last hits. He also threw spells ineffectively and stood too close to creep waves. Most of the time, he lost health or died for no reason. Now, you've probably had lanes where everything felt fine. Then, suddenly, you die 2 times and the lane is over. That's exactly what John experienced. He had to unlearn this. He needed to understand that sometimes, the correct move to do in lane is literally nothing. If your support is not with you, you relax. If you're low on health and mana, you relax. If your opponents are both together and you're left alone, well, you relax. To fix these mistakes, I gave John 2 very simple rules to follow. These rules should apply to you as well. First, if you're going to lose a lot of health for an action, don't do it. It doesn't matter if it's a last hit, deny, creep aggro, or trading against 2 enemy heroes. No action in lane should cost you more than 25-50% of your health. Sometimes, you need to accept that you cannot contest anything and must watch your opponents deny creeps. It's painful, I know, but there's really nothing much you can do about situations like this that are temporary. Second, if your support is not near you, wait for them to return and just sow XP. Wait for safe moments to pull creep aggro. Wait for openings to last hit with spells without being out of position. These rules taught him patience in lane and made him much more consistent. Suddenly, he wasn't losing lanes anymore for no reason. And if you start applying these rules, your lanes will feel much less chaotic too. Then came a breakthrough. I taught John to understand 1 versus 1, 1 versus 2, 2 versus 2, and 2 versus 1 situations. If you're 2 versus 1, you trade. If you're 2 versus 2 or 1 versus 1 with health or level advantage, you trade. If you're 1 versus 2, you wait. John had never thought about lane dynamics this way. Once he did, his lane win rate shot up and he started winning most of his lanes. Next, John had to learn to identify the post-laning stage. Many players think they must defend their tower at all costs. They think that winning the lane means staying in lane forever and bullying the enemy offlaner. In reality, once the offlaner hits level 6 or higher, and you haven't completely been stomping the lane all along, the laning phase is considered over. This usually happens around level 5 to 7, within minutes 6 to 10. This is when you should quickly shove the lane and move to jungle. When your wave is approaching, pull the small camp near your tower for the enemy crit waves to come closer for safe farm. If you have ever died 2 times in a row to the offlaner's level 6 timing, you know exactly why this matters. This one concept immediately stopped many of John's early game deaths. After lane, John had to learn efficient farming patterns. Before this, he was always slow on his timings. He would hit Maelstrom at 14 to 16 minutes and bear free at 16, 17, or sometimes even 20 minutes. He just couldn't understand why. Then, when we reviewed his games, we found the problems. Take note guys, because these problems happen more often than you think. Here it is. He wasn't using teleport scrolls properly. He wasn't stacking camps enough. And most importantly, he wasn't prioritizing waves and fights correctly. These tiny mistakes kept adding up each game. Before you know it, he was now far behind his enemy's carry. Once he learned to optimize his rotations and farming patterns, he could constantly hit Maelstrom at 11 to 30 minutes and Bear Free at 12 to 14 minutes. So, what changed? John had learned to start prioritizing pushing creep waves that were safe. He stopped AFK farming in his jungle camps defensively all the time, and started to understand that creep waves were worth much more than jungle camps. To match one creep wave, you need to farm 2 medium to large camps, which takes much more time on top of the walking distance between camps. A lot of you avoid using TPs because you don't want to waste it, but good carries understand how to use TPs aggressively to increase farm and pressure on the map. I hope you guys are able to follow so far and are taking notes to apply to your games. If you also want to be coached like this and improve faster, check the link in the description below. I teach fundamentals personalized to your bracket, hero pool and role. Anyway, let's continue. The next step John had to learn was to incorporate ancient camps into his farming pattern. Some of you ignore ancients completely, or begin farming them at the wrong time. John was the same. The easiest way to put it is, ancients are best farmed once you get items like Maelstrom, Bear Free or Mask of Madness. Some heroes also rely more on abilities to farm them, like Alchemist with Acid Spray, or Terrorblade with Conjure Image and Metamorphosis. To smoothly execute a clean farming pattern, you need to always be reading the game timer. At 40 to 45 seconds, I reminded John to prepare for ancient stacks in his farming route. One ancient camp gives slightly more XP and gold than a creep wave. Knowing this new information, it helped him to build a rhythm. It goes something like this. Read map, check for good fights, read time, push safe creep waves, stack ancients, farm ancients and nearby camps, repeat. On top of this, he also learned to prioritize the 14 and 21 minute XP shrines into his farming route. Once he applied all this, his level and farm exploded. He was constantly hitting level 15 to 17 within 20 minutes, with 150 to 200 last hits every time. He was also averaging at over 10,000 net worth by the 20 minute mark. If you're able to follow this game plan in the early game phase, I'm sure you'll be able to hit numbers like this as well. Then came the next learning curve, which was to understand team movements and power spikes. Before, John used to join most early team fights without hitting his big item timings. He would enter them without BKB, chase enemies into fog, and just get kited to death. Either that, or he didn't join fights at all. He didn't know when he should be farming or fighting throughout the game. Let's be honest, most players don't. Before hitting BKB or big item timings, prioritize farming and only join fights if they are convenient or good. Good fights should be easy fights with fast cleanup kills that are reachable within our farming route. They shouldn't feel like we're going out of our way to participate in. These fights normally look like low health enemies overextending near our towers, or team fights breaking out beside us. At the same time, avoid bad fights that will waste your time. Bad fights are normally fights far away from us that we do not fully know if you can win them easily or not. These are fights that you do not want to be a part of, as they are distractions that will cost you a lot of time. This should be your main focus for the first 20 to 25 minutes. Then, after hitting BKB or big power spikes, you need to start playing closer to your team if your team decides to group and push forwards. We will now begin the mid to late game phase game plan. Start farming near your team in preparation for fights that will break out. You are now strong enough to contribute heavily in team fights and lead your team to victory. In this part of the game, you're expected to show in almost every fight, so definitely do not be farming alone if your team decides to push together. Also aim to take the first ages between 25 to 35 minutes. Once John understood when to farm, when to fight, and when to prioritize ages, he stopped throwing games. Finally, the biggest thing that helped John to climb was improving his map awareness. For years, John would constantly die to heroes missing on the map, whether those heroes were blink initiators, invisible heroes, or just had tons of disables. He always frontline and show himself first on waves, in fights, and on towers. He didn't understand the concept of identifying his biggest threats and avoiding them on the map. This final rule I gave to John fixed most of this issue. The rule was to identify your biggest threats that are missing on the map. Every game, there will be threats like stunners, blink initiators, and heroes with global presence. If your threats are not showing, do not play alone and risk getting picked off. Especially during team fights, you should be patient and wait for these heroes to show. For example, an Axe with Blink or Faces Void with Chronosphere. With this in mind, John started to play behind his teammates more. He no longer tanked the enemy's ganks, but instead let his allies take the first hits. He waited until his threats were visible. Suddenly, he ended games with 2 to 3 deaths instead of 7 or 8. If you learn to play like this, you will no longer throw your lead. After the 5th coaching session, John no longer relied on luck to win his games. He stopped blaming his teammates and truly started focusing on himself. Many of my students have reached Immortal applying the same principles. I hope you have gotten valuable information from this video, and I'll see you again in the next one.